retired to his room with his wife. As he entered the room, his wife entered first and he entered second. And she went and she sat down on the bed, and as he entered, he saw the kitab, she found it. And he said, this is the book that I've been searching and looking for such a long time. So he sat by the door and he opened up the book and he began reading and reading and reading until his mother came knocking on the door 5 times. So his mother opened up the door and she saw him reading and he's still wearing his clothes that he got married in. And his mother said to him, my son, what are you doing? Your wife is sitting on the bed and you sitting here. And then he said this book out, and then she knew it's his uncle was playing with Thick. And then that was his thirst for knowledge. Can you imagine that? So where's our himmah for ilm, for knowledge? SubhanAllah. And then the knowledge is one aspect. As for the barakah and the rahmah, the blessings of Allah that He sends, the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He sends, and wings that angel that spreads open their wings for the person that is upon a journey of knowledge. What about all of that? Allah make us students of Deen. The Prophet ﷺ said, the fish in the oceans make istighfar for the student of knowledge. So, Dr. Muhammad Sa'id Ramadan al-Bhuti rahimahullah tabaraka wa ta'ala, he continued with his book Inward Sin, Batinul Itham. And in brief, he spoke about the fact that the greatest enemy, the greatest thing that leads to the destruction of humanity is the nafs. And the nafs, we spoke about the importance of the purification of the nafs. In fact, one of the last discussions we had was striving against the nafs and forcing and pushing the nafs to break down in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and trying to do more and trying to do more in terms of acts of worship, in terms of abstaining from anything that the nafs desires. Maulana Mu'adh Ali, our teacher, Maulana Mu'adh can be very I don't know what's the right word to use, but like dramatic, right? So he said, he made the example of the untamed nafs. He said some people's nafs is like a Rottweiler barking at you. And you only overcame and overpowered your nafs if you train your nafs to become like a quiet poodle. And then he made the sound of a Rottweiler and the sound of a poodle. And I'm not going to try that. Allah grants us victory over the nafs. And then he said the fuel of the nafs is hubbud dunya, loving the dunya. And how loving the dunya fuels the nafs, destroys the nafs, and eventually it creates all the problems that we observe and witness in the world today. In the chapter prior to today's dars, he said that how does this destruction come about? And he said, as I have already told you, due to his attachment to this worldly life, the heart becomes afflicted with these dangerous illnesses and diseases. Then the unity of the Muslims is broken, and whatever trust there is between them dissipates, and thus they become enemies to one another, as groups and as individuals. They consume one another in a fire of animosity and hatred. Everyone hates each other. No one is there to support each other. The failure of my brother becomes something that I become happy about. The loss of my brother becomes something that I'm happy about. The success of my brother makes me sad and his loss makes me happy. Can you imagine a society where the success of your brother makes you sad and his loss makes you happy? That's what happens when the nafs is ruined. This is the consequences of the danger of the nafs being spoiled. They consume one another in a fire of animosity and hatred. My brother adopts a path of knowledge. I say, I want to see how long he's going to last. My brother decides to turn his life around. He stops smoking. I want to see how long he's going to stop smoking. He decides to be regular in coming to the masjid and attending programs on dhikr. There's no, I don't desire khair, I don't desire good, because the nafs is bad. So I'm waiting for him to fail. I'm waiting for him to fall off the wagon. And then when he tries again, and then we make statements, let's see how long he lasts now, this time around. Like these are statements that we're familiar with because this is the state of the nufus of our community. The fact that in traditional societies, when the nafs has gone bad, people will feel this but they won't express it because they know it's something shameful that I can't desire kuffar. But how bad has society become when I can actually express the evil that exists within me? The enemy then reaps the rewards of this by subjugating them and defeating them. When the enemy observes this, the enemy uses it against Muslims. And how often do we see the time old the time old technique of divide and conquer? If people observe Muslims and their strength and their number as a threat, then the easiest way is to cause them to divide. And why is it easy to cause them to divide? It's because the nufus are bad. But if the nufus are pure, then you cannot divide them. Even the Mongols did the same thing. Right? The Mongols, they come from the east. They're taking over Muslim countries. The nufus of people are already deteriorating. This is not very long after Imam Ghazali. When the Mongols came into Baghdad, it was not very long after Imam Ghazali. Therefore, many of the books of Imam Ghazali went lost when the Mongols came and burnt down the libraries in Baghdad and Iraq and those lands, Khorasan. Alright? And Imam Ghazali tells you what the reality of the people were in Islam. There was fighting, there was politics, and Imam Ghazali was, of course, this intelligent young man. He was brilliant. His intellect was outstanding. His ability to perceive things was amazing. He became a student of knowledge. His whole story is an amazing story. I don't want to get into the story. Imam Ghazali's story will take time. He had to go study deen because his father passed away and there was no food for him. They went to madrasa to go eat. He said that طلبنا العلم لغير الله. We went seeking knowledge not for the sake of Allah. Because there was no money in the house and we need to eat. My father's friend who was entrusted us sent us to the madrasa so we can eat. طلبنا العلم لغير الله. And then he said, فأبى العلم أن يكون إلا لله. But knowledge refused to be but for Allah. So Imam Ghazali attended those madrasas were known as the Nizamiyya. Now, after the governor, Nizam al-Mulk al-Tusi. He belonged to a string of madrasas that were known as the Nizamiyya, that were built by the governor, Nizam al-Mulk al-Tusi. But Imam Ghazali excelled, he became a teacher. He was the student that became better than his teachers. His teacher, Imam al-Haramain, wrote a massive book called Nihayat al-Matlab fi Dirayat al-Madhab, an encyclopedia in Shafi'i. Imam Ghazali took his own encyclopedia and wrote an abridgment of it. And the abridgment became more popular than the encyclopedia. Everything he touched. He was the most popular, famous scholar, but inside he was dying. Inside the nafs was strong. Inside the nafs was spoiled. So Imam Ghazali rahimahullah ta'ala realized that he needs to make mujahadat al-nafs. He needs to strive against his nafs. And that's what we are speaking about here. Mujahadat al-nafs. Because if he was not going to tame his nafs, then all his effort and achievements that he made in the religious sciences would go down the drain. It would mean nothing. So he strived, and what he eventually did was they shifted him from he was at the Nizamiyya in Naysapur, and then they made him director of the Nizamiyya in Baghdad, the main branch. And scholars from around the world came to benefit from him and learn from him. And he realized that he's in great danger. Inward sin, the greatest danger. And he realized that he's في الخطر الأكبر في بخطر عظيم. So under the pretense that he was going for Hajj, he left all the fame that they had. He's at Dars by Imam Ghazali, khalas, thousands of students will be attending. All the fame he left. Under the pretense that he's going for Hajj, but he never went for Hajj, he went to Sham, Greater Syria. And he spent his time in the masajid, in the zawaya, plural of zawiyas, in the Levant. Right? In predominantly Syria, Palestine, that's where he spent his time. And no one knew who he was, a complete stranger. Who's willing to do that? To attain purity of the soul, who's willing to do that? One of my good friends, he told me one day, Shaykh Abdurragman, do you know what would be good for your nafs? Sometimes, because you need to do something. What happens with certain people, coming to the mawlud, attending a class of knowledge, putting on a turban, that is the nafs. So that person is making mujahid. He needs to make a different way with mujahid. Because he's looking to be seen as a scholar or a student of deen, or someone that takes his religion serious and so forth and so on. So that becomes part of his life. My friend told me once, he said, Shaykh Abdurrahman, do you know what would be good for your nafs? Put on a nice suit and tie and go out into the public. Subhanallah. But we must do things that goes against the nafs. If I'm not going to do things that go against the nafs, of course, keeping in mind the sunnah of Rasulullah, keeping in mind the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you can't go against the sunnah or break the law of Allah because you want to go against the nafs. No. Go against things that take you closer to Allah. He said, if these Muslims were to die by being strangled or being demolished in their own homes, it would be more honorable for them than this destruction described by Allah's Messenger, which has sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which has come to pass just as he described. So now he goes on. He said, the reason why I read that passage now, because at the beginning here of the new chapter, our brother Croy started reading today, when he spoke about the consequences of this danger, he said that's the first consequence. The first consequence of a nafs that is bad, that is fueled by the love of the dunya, is this disunity. No one desires good for anyone else. Everyone is fighting with each other. Everyone thinks bad of the next Muslim. No one thinks good of each other. No one wants to see anyone else progress. Everyone is just worried about themselves. The ummah won't go forward. He says that's the first consequence of this danger. The danger of the nafs that has gone bad, fueled by love of this dunya. He said, but there are more consequences. From those consequences, he says, he's referring here to religious activism, which is very much politics. And this is something which is very dangerous. I read this, I put it up on my status now about maybe an hour ago. It's like Dr. Bhuti's description of some political activist. It's so accurate. One of the biggest fitnas of a nafs that has really gone bad is when you use deen to your own benefit. You use deen to your benefit. So it happens in various ways. One of the ways in which it happens is the hafiz uses his hifz for his benefit, his worldly benefit. The shaykh uses his deen, his teaching, his knowledge for worldly benefit. Right? That's part of ostentation, riyah. It's also part of insincerity. Doing things for the sake of others. Using Allah to get something of the dunya. Imam Haddad in his Adab Sulukul Murid, he said that's the most silliest thing that a person can do. To use Allah's deen to get something of this dunya. He says that You identify somebody that you want to get something from. Then you use your piety, your sunnah, your dhikr, you come into the mawlud, or my hifz of the Quran, or my beautiful voice, or to impress that person to benefit from it. Sometimes it's a specific person, sometimes it's not a specific person. But ultimately, I use aspects of deen to gain some benefit of the dunya. That's one of the illnesses of the heart. Imam Haddadi said that if this foolish person had any brain, he would have known that the dunya belongs. If he wanted the dunya and he didn't want Allah, he would have known that the dunya belongs to Allah. And if he turned to Allah asking Allah for the dunya, Allah could have given him the dunya and he wouldn't have had to be guilty of this great and major crime. Why are you using Allah's deen to get something from someone? Speak to the one. Said Habib Umar often quotes a story which is somewhat similar. He said that he says a wealthy man or a king invites you to a banquet at his home, a five-star banquet. But when you arrive at the gates, you can't enter because the king's dogs are stopping you from entering. And you fear the dogs. So now you and your friends that were invited to this banquet, what do? You try to distract the dogs. You try to throw them with a stone. You try to scare them away, or you try to feed them something, they're trying whatever they are, but the dogs are there. They're not able to enter until the king or the wealthy man that is inside of the house observes these people trying to come in, and he comes to them and he says that, why have you not come in? I've invited you to the banquet. So they say, we're trying, but we can't get rid of your dogs. So he said that, why are you struggling with the dogs? Why did you not call the owner of the dogs? And had you called the owner of the dogs, the owner would have told the dogs, like I'm telling the dogs, sit one side and the dogs on one side, and they were able to come in. So everything in life that we're trying to achieve on our own is like the person trying to enter the king's house, but he's trying to get rid of the dogs by himself. But if you speak to the owner, if you speak to your Lord, if you speak to your Creator, if you speak to the one who's in charge, if you speak to Allah, then khalas. Allah can make possible for you what He wants. You want to go for Umrah? Speak to Allah. One option is applying for a visa. Trying to get my passport and applying for a visa and saving money and which is all necessary. We're not saying it's not necessary, but that's like fighting with a dog. Speak to Allah. Speak to Allah. If Allah accepts you, khalas. If Allah accepts you, whether you have a passport or not, you'll be there. If Allah accepts you, whether there's a visa or no visa, you'll be there. Right? What papers can stop Allah from taking you where Allah wants to take you? So yeah, at similar, Imam Haddad saying, why are you using deen to get something from another person? Something of this dunya. When the dunya belongs to Allah. And you might as well just speak to Allah and Allah can grant you the dunya if Allah wants. And there's nothing wrong in asking Allah for the dunya in any case, right? There's nothing wrong in asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for something of this dunya. One of our teachers, I'm not going to mention his name now, he came home from Hajj. When he came home from Hajj, in the same week or the next week, he pulled out a Isuzu double cab KB Litibati, 2 whatever, a Kwaibati, right? That time was very nice, right? So the students, I say to him, Maulana, it looks as if you made dua for this bucket. So he said, yes, in front of the Kaaba. I asked Allah for this bucket, Allah gave me the bucket. Then he says, I did not only ask Allah for the bucket, he gave Allah for the diesel kafra. There's nothing wrong in asking things of this. So Muhammad said, rather ask Allah. Now, that's on a small scale, and on an individual scale. But now, what if your agenda is bigger? What is your agenda? Your agenda is power. Your agenda is rule. Your agenda is taking over countries. And your greed is leadership. because the nafs is spoiled. Then what do? You start saying that um, you don't make people aware that your desire is the kursi, or the seat of power, or leadership. You say you want to establish deen on the lands. So now you speak as if you want to establish sharia, and you want to establish deen, and you want Allah's law must be there, right? But Allah's law is not even in your own home. There's no Allah's law in your life. The way your Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, but there's no Rasul sallallahu in your life. But you want to take over the country. So now what happens is Dr. Bhuti is saying your desire is actually what? Leadership. Desiring leadership is an illness of the heart. This hadith where the Prophet ﷺ prohibits you from desiring leadership. And then what shaitan does is, sometimes shaitan makes you think that your objective is noble and therefore you must be in charge. I say, no, this masjid, or this religious organization, or that religious organization, or that is corruption there. We need to sort out the corruption. The organization must go forward. The masjid must go forward. The madrasa must go forward. We need to be in charge to ensure that it progresses the way Allah and His Rasul wants it to go progress. But the reality is that you just want leadership. So you speak in the name of deen, but you're actually trying to achieve something at your nafs want. That's one of the greatest crimes. So now you're using, then on top of it, because you want leadership, right? And your method of trying to attain leadership is what? Is saying that you want to establish deen. So now you claim to be Islam to establish deen, which automatically means that if anyone else stands up against you, that person is now standing up against. Hey, I didn't put it on. Ajib. So now if anyone speaks out against you, they're automatically speaking out against Islam. Because you now you made yourself the representative of the Sharia in Islam. So what if there's another Islamic party that wants to stand against you? Now you need to show the masses how they're not Islam and we are Islam. And that's what happens in the realm of politics. Right? It's a filthy thing. And Dr. Bhuti, the scholars like Dr. Bhuti, one can't be too open and too direct, but listen to his words. He said here, this is a worldly ambition. Your desire for leadership is a worldly ambition. It does not contradict what has taken over their hearts and what their souls are attached to. This desire of leadership, it doesn't contradict in their heart and what their souls desire because the nafs is spoiled and bad. Thus, to give victory to Islam, they do what other people do to give victory to their movement or denomination. What they are, what they stand for, or what they do is meaningless activism expressed by superficial ideas, theories, and organizations. There's no reality to it because the nafs is spoiled. And in that process, what happens? You have fitna, you have fighting, you have turmoil, you have rioting, you have uprisings, you have. Right? It's a sad reality. It's sad how many wrong happens within the world because of the nafs. It has escaped them that there is a massive difference between the nature of Islam and the nature of these other ideological movements. La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. Leadership is a sin of the heart. A believer shouldn't desire to be a leader. Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu ta'ala an, the day he was appointed as the Amir of the believers, Amir al-Mu'mineen, he said that there was never a day in my life that I desired to be a leader. Today we raise children with the idea that you must become a leader. So we have leadership initiatives so that you can become. How do you raise someone to become a leader, but Islam doesn't want you much desire to be a leader? So what are we doing? You see, never a day in my life that I desire to be a leader, except one occasion. That one occasion was Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was out on an expedition with the Sahaba Ridwanullahi Ta'ala Ajma'in. And the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he made an announcement. He said that لَأُعْتِيَنَّ الرَّايَةَ غَدًا رَجُلًا يُحِبُّهُ اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ. I'm going to give the banner. The banner is indicative of leadership. I'm going to give the leadership of this expedition tomorrow to a man. I'm handing the banner over to a man that Allah and Allah's Rasul loves. Sayyidina Umar said that's the only time he desired to be the leader. Because the Prophet said if he was going to be the leader there, Allah and Allah's Rasul loves him. All the Sahaba, that was the only occasion they desired to be leaders. The next morning, Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he comes out of his tent with the banner. He wants to hand it over to that man. And the Sahaba all present. And the Prophet looks to his left and to his right. And it says, if all the Sahaba, if their hearts are shouting out, Ya Rasulullah, choose me. Why choose me? Not because they want leadership. Because they want to be that person that Allah and Allah's Rasul loves. That's what's important to them. Leadership, I want to know that Allah and His Rasul loves me. So, the Prophet looks, he says, where is Ali ibn Abi Talib? Where is Sayyidina Ali? So they say, Ya Rasulullah, Sayyidina Ali has an infection in his eye, he's not well. As if, forget about him, choose one of us. The Prophet said, no, bring Ali to me. And then Sayyidina Ali comes with the assistance of someone and they bring him to Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam comes to Sayyidina Ali and he takes from his saliva, because his eye is infected, and he takes from his saliva and he places it in the eye of Sayyidina Ali. And his eye is immediately cured. There is no eye drops or antibiotic that is greater than the saliva of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. The Prophet takes from his saliva and he puts it in the eye of Sayyidina Ali. And Sayyidina Ali said that I often used to get an infection in that eye, but from the day the Prophet placed his saliva in my eye, I never ever had an infection in that eye again. Antibiotics may cure your infection now. First of all, not immediately, after time. But a few days later, that infection can return. The saliva of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, khalas. Therefore, in the famous poem at Qamarun, he said, what? وَأَيْنُ عَلِيٍّ or وَأَيْنُ حَيْدَرَ, it comes in some narrations, خُذْهُ دَلِيلًا. Take the eye of Ali as a proof regarding the saliva. وَرِيقُ الْمُصْطَفَى يَشْفِي الْعَلِيلَ. The saliva of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam cures the one who is ill. Cures the one who is ill. Yeah. There's several encounters of the Salihin. Right. Like not even for Anna. One of the great saints in Durban, I don't think the Murid would be very happy if I should mention his name. Passed away now, rahimahullah ta'ala. He was a great, great lover of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Some of his students used to get shifa from his saliva. No. وَرِيقُ الْمُصْطَفَى يَشْفِي الْعَلِيلَ. So, desiring leadership is it. But don't claim that you don't desire leadership. Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, if he wasn't the leader of this ummah, Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam never portrayed himself as a leader. He never acted as a leader. He never made demands as a leader. Whatever you want to understand of what a leader means, look at Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. The Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam used to come into a gathering. He enters a gathering, and then instead of coming to sit at the front, as how the leader should be seated in the front, he sits at the back. كان الرسول يجلس حيث ينتهي به المجلس. Wherever the gathering ended at the back, that's where the Prophet sat down. But of course, wherever he sat became the front. So when he sat, it became the front. Khalas, everyone turns around. Rasul was here. But he will come to the front himself. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Subhanallah. How is the nufus spoiling the world, eh? How much chaos, how much fighting, how much bloodshed. إلى آخر ما ذكره 45. So in tomorrow's dars, we're going to continue speaking about these consequences, the consequences of the nafs that is spoiled. But that will end our discussion. Tomorrow we end our discussion on the consequences of this great danger, the spoiled nafs, fueled by love of the dunya. There's one that I left out, but I'm going to touch on it tomorrow with the second part, inshallah, tabaraka wa ta'ala. لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. بسم الله.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Etiquette with the Quran, page 13. Not seeking a worldly objective. The teacher must not make his intentions to teach for the purpose of attaining some worldly objective, such as wealth, leadership, influence, rising above his peers, gaining people's praise, or drawing their attention to himself.
Samala, like the discussion is just continuing.
One does not dishonor his teaching of the Quran by hoping to obtain some favor by way of an influential student who recites to him, whether the favor is in the form of property or some service, however small, or even a gift that he would not have received had it not been for his student reciting to him. Allah says, whoever seeks the harvest of the hereafter, we shall increase his harvest. And whoever seeks the harvest of this world, we shall give him of it here. But in the hereafter, he will have no portion. Whoever desires the immediate gains of this world, we hasten what we will to whomever we will. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anh stated that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whoever learns knowledge by which one customarily seeks the pleasure of Allah Most High, but learns it in order to obtain one of this world's riches, he will not find the sin of paradise on the day of judgment.
Ya Rab.
Abu Dawud related it with a rigorously authenticated chain. There are many hadiths similar to it. Anas, Hudhaifa, and Ka'b ibn Malik radiallahu anhum stated that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whoever seeks knowledge so that he can contest fools, vie with the scholars, or attract attention toward himself, occupies his seat in the fire. Tirmidhi related it from the account of Ka'b ibn Malik radiallahu anh that states it puts him into the fire. Not objecting to students reciting with others. The teacher takes every precaution from boasting because of the many people under his tutelage and who patronize him. He is cautious of disliking his students reciting with someone else who offers them benefit. These afflictions put some ignorant teachers to the test, and they are clear indications of the evil intention and corrupt innermost metal of whoever possesses them. Indeed, they are sure proof of the teacher's lack of desire to teach for the sake of the noble pleasure of Allah Most High. Since if he were to desire Allah Most High by teaching the Quran, he would not have disliked his students reading with others. Instead, he should say to himself, I sought Allah's obedience by teaching, and it has thus been achieved. The student sought an increase in knowledge by reciting with someone else, and he should not censure the student. We relate in the Musnad of Imam Abu Muhammad al-Darimi Imam Abu Muhammad al-Darimi, Allah grant him mercy, about whom there is consensus on his profound learning and leadership, that Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anh said, O bearers of knowledge, act according to your knowledge, since the scholar is the one who acts according to what he has learned and whose knowledge corresponds to his action. There will be groups who possess knowledge that does not go beyond their collarbones. Their action contradicts their knowledge, their inward state contradicts their outward. They sit in circles vying with one another until a man becomes angry with the one he sits with, and so he sits with someone else, leaving the other behind. Their actions in these assemblies of theirs do not ascend to Allah Most High. It is rigorously authenticated that Imam al-Shafi'i, Allah Most High have mercy upon him, said, I hope that people learn this knowledge, meaning his knowledge and books, with the condition that they not attribute a single letter of it to me. Molded by good qualities. The scholar should be molded by the good qualities mentioned in the revelation, and the praiseworthy inner qualities and the pleasing habits that Allah Most High guided to. They include abstinence in this world, thinking little of it and lacking concern for it and its worldly people. They include generosity, offendedness, noble character, and a cheerful face, but without becoming immodest. They include discernment, self-control, and having above vile accusation. They include adhering to scrupulousness, humility, tranquility, dignity, modesty, submission, and avoiding laughter and frequent play. They include adhering to religious tasks such as cleaning, removing filth and hair that the legislation mentions removing, trimming the mustache, trimming the nails, and combing the beard, and removing offensive smells and offensive clothing. The scholar should take every precaution from envy, showing of pride, and thinking little of others, even if they are beneath him. Invocations and supplications. Invocations and supplications. The teacher should implement the hadiths that were related concerning saying Subhanallah, sublime and perfect is Allah, La ilaha illallah, there is no deity except Allah, and other litanies and supplications. The teacher should be constantly conscious of Allah Most High when alone and when in public, and his reliance in all of his affairs should be upon Allah Most High.
Many of us may feel that I'm not a teacher of the Quran, I'm not a big teacher or don't teach Quran. And Imam Nawawi rahimahullah is here speaking about the teacher of the Quran. And maybe these advices, they are not meant for me. However, everyone should have an intention to teach Quran. You should have an intention to study so that you can teach. The Prophet ﷺ, he said that the best of you are those who study the Quran and teaches it to others. And and we should also, in the previous chapters, Imam Nawawi spoke about the greatness and the importance of the Quran, so that you and I have a desire to study the Quran. And part of my objective of studying the Quran is to teach the Quran. That on the one hand, before I start with these discussions, right, that should be my attitude. So he's speaking about the teacher of the Quran. I shouldn't say I'm not a teacher of the Quran, because I should aspire to teach the Quran, number one. Number two is, what these lessons should also tell us is that when I'm searching for a teacher of the Quran, these should be the qualities of the teacher of the Quran. So these are two ways in which you and I can appreciate these discussions here by Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah tabaraka wa ta'ala. For the Quran is a fortress. Sayyidina Ubay ibn Ka'b radiallahu ta'ala, and he said that there are three fortresses. Yeah, three fortresses. And these are not fortresses that is made out of brick and cement. Neither is it a fortress made out of armor or metal or alarm systems. These are fortresses that belong to the batin. And by now everyone should appreciate the system of the batin. When he said there are three fortresses, he said in the batin there are three fortresses. That's what he means. You don't see them as fortresses, but they protect you. And they protect you from all types of things, from the harms of others. It protects you from ailments. It protects you from sicknesses. Now, by his statement, I used to often quote it during the COVID-19, because while there's nothing wrong in taking a physical means to protect you from something that you believe to be harmful to yourself, what we should also appreciate and understand is that there are other fortresses that should not be forgotten. And it does not make sense to abandon a spiritual fortress for a physical fortress. And he said that al-Husun thalatha, there are three fortresses. He said, al-Masjidu Hisnun, the masjid is a fortress. The masjid where you find yourself now protects you from all types of harm and all types of evil. وَذِكْرُ اللَّهِ حِسْنٌ, and the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a fortress that protects you. And then he said, وَقِرَاءَةُ الْقُرْآنِ, and reciting the Quran is a fortress. People that recite the Quran, they are preserved and protected by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Habib Muhammad, our Shaykh Habib Muhammad bin Abdurragman Saqaf, Habib Muhammad, when Saudi went into lockdown, he directed himself completely to the recitation of the Quran. And I forget the Shaykh's name, a famous Egyptian Shaykh that resides between Cairo and Jeddah, but a Salih Rajul, Waliullah. Habib Muhammad recited Quran to him almost every day. And he got ijaza in the various riwayat and hafs and I don't know what other qira'at, but quite a few. And Habib Muhammad is from the Ahlul Bayt. The Shaykh loved him intensely, and he loved the Shaykh. He related to us that his Shaykh in qira'at now met up in an accident. He fell. And he said the family was so worried. He had such a bad fall, they wanted to rush him to hospital. Because he was just laying there and he must have broken something and rushed him to hospital. And then Habib Muhammad said, the Shaykh, in his weak state, he said, don't take me to hospital. Take me to the place where I teach Quran. And they said, no, you must go. He said, take me to the place where I recite Quran and bring one of my students to come recite the Quran, I'll be fine. So they placed him laying there. His student came, recited his work to him, and he listened and listened. And before he completed his lesson, he was feeling fine and able to sit up. The Quran is a fortress, protects you. So how can I not desire the Quran? How can I not study the Quran? How can I not send my children to memorize the Quran? Allah. And there's nothing better than the Quran. In a narration, the Prophet ﷺ says that whoever recites the Quran, and then imagine that anyone was given anything better than what he received by the time Allah afforded him to recite the Quran, that person hasn't truly shown reverence to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He hasn't truly glorified Allah. Because there's nothing like the Quran. Ibn Abi Zayd al-Qayrawani. Listen to the story. Listen to the story. When I read this narration, I feel like we must push the fees up there at TTI or TTR, whatever it is. Ibn Abi Zayd al-Qayrawani, he said that one of the jurists gave his son to a muhaffid al-Quran, a teacher of the Quran, to teach him Quran, a hizb of the Quran. Now, hizb of the Quran could mean about 7 juz. So the teacher taught him 7 juz of the Quran. So the teacher, the father of the boy, after he taught the boy a hizb, which is about 7 juz, gave him 100 gold coins. You know how much is 100 gold coins? Like 100 gold coins is probably close to 1,000,000. I'll have to check it. Just see if we can find it. The weight of a gold coin is on 4.25 grams. So 4.25 times 100 gives you, right? 425 kilograms of gold. You can check what the price of gold is and give you a few 100,000. Took him 7 Jews. The father gave him a few 100,000. So the teacher said, La hawla wa la quwwata. I didn't do anything to deserve this. ما عمل شيء نستحق به هذا كله. So the Shaykh looked at the teacher. He took his son away and said that my son can't study Quran by you any longer. Because you don't have glorification for the Quran in your heart. How can you think that this 100 gold coins is not worth the 7 Jews you taught me? That 7 Jews you taught him is worth the world and what it contains. You don't have value for the Quran in your heart. My son can't study by any longer and put this on someone else. That's something to consider the next time you would come to the Hifz teacher and say, if you have some discount with the fees. The Quran. The teacher of the Quran should not desire anything of the dunya. That's the first point Imam Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala makes. ألا يقصد به توصلا إلى عرض من أراضي الدنيا من مال أو رياسة أو وجاهة أو ارتفاع. He shouldn't desire any possession of the dunya. He shouldn't desire any leadership. He shouldn't desire any status. He shouldn't desire to be seen better than any of his contemporaries. He shouldn't desire any praise from people. He shouldn't desire people turning towards him and seeing him to be a great person. You see, now you see, he shouldn't do what? La yashin. He shouldn't spoil this beautiful act of teaching the Quran with any of these low desires. With any of these low desires. Subhanallah. ومن كان يريد حرث الدنيا نؤتيه منها وما له في الآخرة من نصيب من كان يريد العاجلة عجلنا له فيها ما نشاء ولمن نريد. If you want the dunya, Allah said, we'll give you the dunya, but then don't expect anything in the akhirah. Subhanallah. The Prophet ﷺ said, whoever acquires knowledge that should be intended for the sake of Allah, knowledge that is for Allah, whoever acquires knowledge, but he acquires knowledge to attain or gain something from this dunya, that person won't find the fragrance of Jannah. He won't find the fragrance of Jannah. And he said that whoever acquires knowledge to debate with the ignoramuses or to direct the attention of people towards him should build a place for him in the fire of Jahannam. That's on the one hand. Another quality the teacher of the Quran should have, he shouldn't be focused on how many people is coming to study by him. And if someone else has more students, and he becomes sad, and if he has more students, he becomes happy. Or if his students go to study by someone else, then he's upset with his students. Right? That's not the way of a teacher of Deen, a teacher of the Quran. That's a sign that that person doesn't have sincerity, that he's not doing it for the sake of Allah. And it will be said to the reciter of the Quran on the Day of Judgment, to the scholar, that we have given you knowledge and we have given you ilm, what have you done with it? And he will say, Ya Rabb, I taught for your sake, and I taught the Quran, and I taught Deen, and I gave classes, and I gave lectures. And Allah's response will be, Kadhabta, you lie. You did so that people can say how beautiful you recite, how knowledgeable you are, how eloquent you are. وَقَدْ قِيلَ, that was said. And then Allah will say to his angels, take this person and throw him face first into the fire of Jahannam. And then the quotation that he presented from Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu ta'ala an has great ma'ani and meaning. He said, O carriers of the Quran, do good Because the scholar is the one that acts upon his knowledge. The scholar is one who his action is in accordance with his knowledge. And then he said there will come a time where there will be people that will be supposed carriers of knowledge, but their knowledge won't go beyond their throats. They will speak knowledge, they will teach knowledge, they will recite Quran, but it doesn't go beyond their throats. One of the scholars in South Africa, this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned this in a number of hadith that knowledge won't go beyond their throats. In one hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, if you see them pray, you will consider your prayer to be nothing compared to their salah. And when you see them reciting Quran, you will consider your recitation of the Quran to be nothing compared to their recitation of the Quran. They'll appear to be people of deen, right? The Prophet was referring to a group of extremists, people that adopt extreme views within religion. The role of a scholar, in a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said that the role of the scholar is that يحمل هذا العلم عن كل خلف عدوله ينفون عنه تحريف الغالين وتأويل الجاهلين وانتحال المبطلين وتأويل الجاهلين. The scholar, there are three groups of people that he needs to protect deen from. He said from every succeeding generation, there will be people of integrity that carry this knowledge of Islam, this knowledge that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam sent to us. That's a beautiful hadith. In every succeeding generation, there will be a group of people of integrity that will carry this knowledge. يحمل هذا العلم عن كل خلف عدول. Then the Prophet said, ينهون عنه تحريف الغالين. They protect deen from the incorrect, distorted interpretations of extremists. Those who claim to be fighting jihad and killing people left, right, and center, and one execution after the next in the name of deen, the furthest thing from deen. But if you were to look at them, and this is what I can remember when such organizations, I don't want to mention the names, but I'm sure you know who we're speaking about, when they first appeared in the world, I know students that admire them. And they create the most beautiful videos speaking about the good they are doing. But they're unbatil. They're unbatil. And regarding one of these extreme organizations that took over lots of lands in the Middle East, and a scholar in South Africa, who we hold dear and have deep respect for, he dreamt of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he asked the Prophet about this group. And the Prophet told him that the hadith is on your desk. And the hadith that was on his desk was that hadith where Rasul said that you will consider your salah to be nothing when looking at their salah, and your fasting to be nothing. They will read the Quran, this wording over here, سيكون أقوام, they will have knowledge, but it wouldn't go beyond their throats. They don't understand the knowledge that they hold. They're not practicing on true deen. Now, Allahu Akbar. And then he quoted the story of Imam Shafi that I already quoted yesterday. So the carrier of the Quran must be someone of deen. He must be living the Quran. He must have the sunnah in his life. He must have the character of the Quran. ينبغي للمؤلم أن يتخلق بالمحاسن التي ورد الشرع بها. It's essential that the teacher of the Quran, and that's the second, first I said, when we're speaking about the teacher of the Quran, earlier I said, we should read this with aspirations to be teachers of the Quran. And secondly, we should read it to identify who should be the teachers, who should be our sons and our daughters, what qualities their teachers should have. A hifz teacher, a teacher of the Quran, like it's almost like the beginning and the end of a hafiz of the Quran. You must ensure that you choose a person that is a beautiful role model for your child. A person who, when your child is a married man, one day when he comes to speak to him, his words are going to fall heavy on his heart and on his ears. Because if you live in a community where there are so many Hufaz, and many times the Hafiz doesn't get a good upbringing, or he's spoiled within his home, and he lives a life of disobedience, or he's distant from Allah. There's no tarbiyah, he has no Shaykh, he has no gatherings that he's connected to. Like any person, never mind the Hafiz, any person that doesn't have scholars that he's connected to and attached to, and circles of knowledge and teachers where he seeks guidance from, like be very careful of such people. Right? Our Mashaykh, they say that a person that doesn't have a Shaykh, he doesn't need to be a Sufi Shaykh. Just a Shaykh that he takes counsel from. Like some senior within the community that you listen to when you're wrong and you take his advice. Right? Again, I can make the example of the Shaykh that we hold dear and often take his advice, Shaykh Ibrahim, someone like that. Doesn't have to be you don't have a Shaykh from whom you're receiving guidance and consulting, then shaitan becomes your Shaykh. So one needs to be careful. Who is my son studying by? I know of teachers of Quran, Wallahi al-Azim. You may find this so strange, but it's true. I know of Hifz teacher teaching boys Hifz of the Quran, and in break they smoke dakhar. I know other Hifz teachers of the Quran, they're teaching Hifz of the Quran, but they're speaking to the students about the date that they had with his girlfriend. Or he went to the movies. How is my son going to have ta'zeem for the Quran, glorification for the Quran, reverence for the Quran, if that's the state of his teacher? So when I choose a teacher for my children, I must be particular, I must be careful. Subhanallah. It's essential that the teacher should have the beautiful characteristics and qualities that the Sharia speaks of. And from those qualities is that he shouldn't desire dunya. Shouldn't be attached to dunya. Right? He must be known for generosity and kindness, for his beautiful character. The teacher should be known for talaqatul wajh. You know what is talaqatul wajh? He must be known for smiling. I don't see no one smiling in this class. Should be someone that smiles. Now, he must be known for forbearance and for patience. He should be known to avoid income that is bad. He should be known for his piety, for his scrupulousness, for his humility, for his tranquility. He should be known for being particular in executing his awrad and his adhkar. Ajib. He even said he should be known for trimming his mustache. Because it's sunnah. And trimming his nails. Someone that's presentable, someone that's decent, someone that's clean. Because that teacher of your son now becomes his role model. That teacher becomes his role model. He should be known for keeping his beard tidy. Tasrih al-lihya. He should be known for removing foul and bad smells from his body. I'm reading this, mashallah, and I'm thinking of our teacher, Shaykh Ismail. How fortunate are we to study the Quran with him. Now, role models. To aspire to be a teacher and be a teacher like this. These are the qualities of a teacher. Hafidh Imran is also a beautiful teacher. May Allah grant Hafidh Imran all these beautiful qualities. And all the other Hufaz that are here with us. Zaid Kroy knew all of this, and therefore he sent his boys to go study by Shaykh Shafi. Allah grant us his qualities. So this is what I need to look for in a teacher. The fact that the teacher has a beautiful voice, I can think about it, but that's not the beginning. And there are things that are far, 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 far more important than whether the voice is nice or whether the voice is not nice. Right? the attachment to the Quran, the ta'zeem of the Quran. La ilaha illallah. The teacher, he concluded off by saying the teacher should instill within the students and quote to them a hadith that speaks about the importance of dhikr, tasbih and tahleel. The teacher should teach them the adhkar that they should be making on a daily basis. These adhkar and da'awat, the best work for you to consult any teacher that is teaching a group of youngsters and he wants to impress upon them the important adhkar and da'awat that they should be reading on a daily basis. Then one of the best works you can use in this regard is the Dakhira al-Musharrafa of our teacher Sayyid al-Habib Umar. The glorious treasure is called. All the adhkar and du'as that you should be reading on a daily basis. From those adhkar is a dua that you need to recite when walking to the masjid. So all of us are in the masjid now or not? But how many of us recited the dua when walking to the masjid or when coming to the masjid? And how many of us knows the dua of coming to the masjid? Qasim, you know the dua and coming to the masjid? Ahmad, you know the dua and coming to the masjid? La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. اللهم إني أسألك بحق السائلين عليك وبحق الراغبين إليك فإني لم أخرج أشرا ولا بطرا ولا رياء ولا سمعة بل خرجت اتقاء سخطك وابتغاء مرضاتك أسألك أن تنقذني من النار وأن تدخلني الجنة برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Imam Nawawi is saying the teacher that should be teaching your children should know these du'as and practice it in the first place, and you should be able to share these du'as with your child. Allah grant us good teachers and grant our children good teachers. There's a lot of good teachers of the Quran in the community. I can't claim to know all of them. And the examples I made of bad teachers, like the example of a teacher using drugs with a student. I use that example because I wanted to keep it still above board. The thing that some Hifz teachers are guilty of, and again, because the nafs is spoiled. Another thing that we should strongly consider is that if I have daughters, then it's best for my daughter to study under a Hafiz of the Quran who is a female. No. If I have young daughters, it's always better for a daughter. There's nothing wrong if she studies with a male, and it's permissible, and it happened within a tradition. Right? But then, even more so, these qualities that I'm observing within the teacher should be more apparent within the male. No. Allah grant us these beautiful characteristics and place within our heart greatness of the Quran. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Who's reading a nasheed today? Who's the munshi? We'll end now in the next 3-4 minutes, inshallah.
اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه وعلى آله تفل في البئر أضحت سلسبيلا تفل في البئر أضحت سلسبيلا تفل في البئر حد سلسبيلا وصار لصحبه شهدا مداما قمرون سيدنا النبي قمر وجميل 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 سيدنا النبي وجميل وكف المصطفى كالورد نادي وعطرها يبقى إذا مست أيادي وعم نوالها كل العباد وعم نوالها كل العباد وعم نوالها للعباد حبيب الله يا خير البرايا قمر سيدنا النبي قمر وجميل 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 سيدنا النبي وجميل القيام للحبيب علي فرض وترك الفرض ما هو مستقيم قيامي للحبيب علي فرض وترك الفرض ما هو مستقيم عجبت لمن له عقل وفهم عجبت لمن له عقل وفهم عجبت لمن له عقل وفهم يرى هذا الرسول فلا يقوم قمر سيدنا النبي قمر وجميل 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 سيدنا النبي وجميل يا رب علمنا الذي ينفعنا رب فقهنا وفقه أهلنا وقرابات لنا ديننا مع أهل الكتر الأنثى وذكر ربي وفقنا ووفقهم لما ترتضي قولا وفعلا كرما وارزق كل حلال وأخلاء أتقياء علماء نقضى بالخير ونكفى كل شر ربنا واصلح لنا كل الشؤون وأقر برضا منك العيون واقض عنا كل الديون قبل أن تأتينا رسل المنون واغفر استر أنت أكرم من ستر وصلاة الله تغشى المصطفى من إلى الحق والوفاء بكتاب فيه للناس شفاء وعلى الآل الكرام الشرفاء وعلى الصحب المصابيح الغرى اللهم اهدنا بهداك واجعلنا ممن يسارع في رضاك ولا تولنا وليا سواك ولا تجعلنا ممن خالف أمرك وعصاك وحسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل ولا حول إلا بالله العلي العظيم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم يا ربنا اعترفنا بأننا اقترفنا وأننا أسرفنا على لظى أشرفنا فتب علينا توبة تغسل كل حوبا عوراتي وآمن الروعات واغفر لوالدينا ربي ومولودينا والأهل والإخوان وسائر الخلان وكل ذي محبة أو جيرة أو صحبة والمسلمين أجمعا آمين ربي اسمع فضلا وجودا منا لا باكتساب منا بالمصطفى الرسول نحظى بكل سول بالمصطفى الرسول نحظى بكل سول بالمصطفى الرسول نحظى بكل سول صلى وسلم ربي عليه عد الحب وآله وصحبه عداد طش السحب والحمد للإله في البدء والتناهي سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين عدد خلق ورضا نفسي وزنة عرشي ومداد كلماتي اللهم صل وسلم عليه وعلى اله وصحبه